doing marvelous as always. And you know, in this one, you know, I got my special session where I'm going to talk about my sneaker collection, right? For me, you know, with all the physical activity that I do, it's important for me to have the right type of shoes, especially since, you know, because of military service, you know, I ended up leaving with ailments, you know, that being shin splints, plantar fasciitis in my right foot, a heel spur in my left, and then, you know, some tendonitis in my right knee. So, you know, if I'm gonna do certain things, you know, like maybe going for a run or what have you, I gotta make sure I have the right type of shoes. Most of my collection, actually really all my collection will be Nike and Adidas, but I do have one honorable mention. The first thing I wanna go over though with you is, see, I had took some notes because, you know, I remember most of it, but I don't remember all of it, so you have to bear with me there. There's a couple of things I wanna talk about with these shoes. You have what's called shoe drop, and the shoe drop is basically the difference in height between the heel and the forefoot of the shoe. So, you know, you normally in a shoe, the heel will be stacked up a certain millimeters, and then as the shoe goes towards the forefoot, you know, it'll drop down, you know, a certain, you know, millimeters. Usually about 10 or so millimeters is the standard. Now, a lower drop usually promotes a natural stride. So that's typically people who would strike with their midfoot or even with their forefoot. Like if you're a runner who strikes midfoot or with your toes, you know, typically anywhere between 0 to 4 millimeters is your, you know, that will be your drop. And for higher drop shoes, that can aid in, you know, like those who strike heel first. And higher drops tend to have, you know, more maximum cushion, right? If you ever look at like highly cushioned shoes, you know, there's a lot of cushion. So that means, you know, your feet elevate a little bit more up off the ground. They sit a little bit higher up, you know what I'm saying? So with a lower drop, you get a little bit more closer to ground feel. Whereas with the higher drop, you know, you're a little more away from the ground. And that usually is anywhere between 10 to 12 millimeters, so to speak. So the general drop for running shoes is between 8 to 12 millimeters. Now you have the stack height. So the stack height is, of course, the distance between your foot and the ground. I should also mention the shoe drop, right, is, and you'll see it later on with another visual that I'm gonna provide you when I start getting into the shoes I got, but the stack height, so the drop, right, is the difference between the stack height in the heel and the stack height in the forefoot. It's the difference. So like if you have a shoe whose stack height is say 34 millimeters in the heel and 24 millimeters in the forefoot, then that means that drop is 10 millimeters. It's literally the difference between the two, 34 minus 24. You get 10 millimeter drop. Because typically with higher stack shoes, the general purpose for that is to provide you with maximum cushion. That's typically what they're tuned for. For Nike in general, there's a couple of foams I want to go over. Now, just about every running shoe that you can think of, every training shoe has a type of foam that works similarly to these, but I want to go ahead and use these as a base, right? So I want to talk about the Nike ReactX and the Nike ZoomX. Now the Nike ReactX foam is the foam that's tuned for, you know, maximum response, okay? So what that basically means is whenever you hit the ground, the ReactX foam goes to work in providing you the energy return you need so that you can continue to run, right? You won't get, it's supposed to lessen how tired you get. Shoes that have that type of foam in them is usually good for like, you know, daily trainers, you know, everyday runs or what have you. But I would not recommend them for speed, okay? They're not exactly tuned for race day shoes, so, you know, I wouldn't recommend that. Some ReactX foam shoes you can use for like maybe some like up-tempo runs, which basically means you can pick up the pace a little bit, but I wouldn't recommend them for like a straight racing shoe, okay? There's dedicated racing shoes for those if that's what you're looking for. And lastly, with the ReactX foam, that I believe was first introduced in the Nike Infinity RN4s, which unfortunately is now a discontinued line. And that shoe weighed about, I think, 12.5 ounces. So it was a little bit of a heavier shoe, right? It was on the heavier side. So if you ran in those shoes, which I did, I actually used to own those shoes, but I had to take them back because they were very tight around my feet. But I did a whole size up and that still didn't work for me for real. So I had to take those shoes back because, you know, they just, it got to a point where my feet were falling asleep. You know, I don't really like that. So, but you know, what's crazy though is the Nike Infinity Flyknit Run 3s, the ones that came out before the RN4s. I love those shoes, right? That was these shoes right here. Those were the Run 3s, the Flyknits, Infinities. And, you know, those shoes, I ran those shoes out so much. Like I bought a pair one year when they first came out. Actually, I bought those pair, and then I had to buy another pair the same year after about 6 months. And those shoes had the React foam in them. So not the ReactX, okay? Not to be confused with the ReactX foam that's used in Nike shoes now, but the React foam, okay, it was little, not as cushiony, but you know, it was you know, still provided you with enough cushion to be able to, you know, feel your knees on the run. Then there's the Nike ZoomX foam, right? Now there's different types of tuning for these foams, right? So what I mean by that is you may have a ZoomX shoe that's tuned for, you know, maximum cushioning, like the Vomero 18s and the Vomero Pluses, which are shoes that I have that I'm going to go into in a little bit. But you may have ZoomX that's tuned for maximum cushioning, and then ZoomX foam that's tuned for, like, you know, race day. You know what I'm saying? Like, they still provide you some cushion, but maybe not maximum. Maybe they're tuned for like race day shoes. So like an example I can think of might be the Nike Pegasus Plus. Those are ZoomX foam shoes, but the ZoomX in those shoes, while they provide you some cushion and comfort, they're not as cushioned as the Vomero 18s or the Vomero Pluses. In the Nike Pegasus Plus, you know, that's a speed shoe. So that's a ZoomX shoe that you can actually do race day in. You can do marathons, half marathons, 5Ks, 10Ks, you know, and everyday runs, easy runs too. Now, but if we're talking Vomeros though, if we're talking like Vomero 18s or Vomero Pluses, that ZoomX foam is tuned for max cushioning. So what that means is it's probably not going to be a good speed shoe for you. You want to make sure you get you a shoe that's tuned for it. So the Nike Pegasus Plus, the ZoomX in that is tuned for race day, and it's much lighter. I think it's like, I want to say 7 or 8 ounces. It's a lightweight shoe. It's a very much a lightweight shoe. Whereas like say the Vomero 18s, I think is like 11.5 ounces. So it's a bit heavier. And for somebody like me who weighs 200 pounds, going to run in a heavy shoe with all the ailments that I just mentioned earlier at the start of this video, it's not really a good idea. Now, these shoes may very well work for you though. You could there's people who can run in heavier shoes if they're lighter or what have you. Maybe it works for you. You know, maybe you don't have the ailments that I got. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe you can do that. I know I just can't. And it's usually not recommended to run like races and speed, you know what I'm saying, in higher stacked shoes. And the ZoomX foam was first introduced in the Nike Vaporflies, which of course is a dedicated speed racing shoe. And the Vaporflies, I want to say, is about 6.7 ounces. So yeah, 6.7 ounces is a lightweight shoe. Once you start getting to the, you know, I say maybe like 10 ounce, you know, area, then you're gonna be looking at a more heavier shoe. 10 ounce isn't really like that heavy. It's more moderate, I'll say. But 11 and 12, those are heavy shoes. Those are definitely heavy. So now I'm gonna get into my shoes. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the Nike Pegasus 41s, right? As you can see, there's, I think it's right here. It says Nike ReactX right back here, and it says Air Zoom on the front. So what that means is ReactX is the foam that's in it, but it also has 2 Air Zoom units, one in the forefoot and one in the heel. Now, the Pegasus line has, you know, they're pretty good about, like, they've always used Air Zoom units. Before ReactX, they were using the Cushline 3.0 foam. I've owned every Pegasus since the 35. These are some great shoes. The 41s, it took a while for them to win me over because, you know, they weren't like the previous models. My favorite one, I want to say, is probably the 39, and they didn't use ReactX, of course. The 41s is the first Pegasus model that uses the ReactX foam in them. They're nice and cushioned, but they're not highly cushioned. These shoes are not shoes that I would go run in just because of my ailments and because, you know, I'm a heavier runner. These shoes weigh about 10.5 ounces or 10.4 ounces, something like that. Stack height is about 37 millimeters in the forefoot, 27 in the front, which leaves a 10 millimeter drop. The traction, it's a nice outsole right here. It's, you know, this is what they call a waffle, right? So, you know, obviously outside of the white part, everything else, the shoe does a pretty good job at, you know, at sticking to the ground and, you know, providing you the traction you need on toe-offs. Wouldn't recommend for race day. It's 10.4 ounces, so it's a little heavier than you're gonna want. And of course, the cushion in it, I mean, is it's not like, if you're gonna race in a Pegasus shoe, I probably use the Pegasus Plus. These are shoes that I would recommend if you're a beginner and you're trying to run. I would get these, you know, just to train yourself up a little bit, you know, get used to running in them. These also are good for easy runs, recovery runs. You can even do a marathon or 10K in these, okay? So that's what I'd recommend. And I mean, if you do what's called the runner's knot, which some people do, some people like to tie their shoes in a runner's knot so that it gives you that much more security. My next shoe is going to be these ones. These are the Nike Vomero 18s. Now, I got the black and red, black and white, and the blue pair that you see here, those are actually done for, right? Those are gone. I had to cycle those out because I ran the hell out of them. So I'm left with these two, right? I'm left with the black and white and the red and black. Now these have actually a mixture of both of the foams I mentioned. This has a mixture of ZoomX as well as ReactX. So this one has ZoomX on top, ReactX on the bottom. Now the reason for that is of course because, you know, the Vomero 18s, this is the first model that they've done this in. Before, the Vomero previous to this, the 17s, was just a straight ZoomX, right? It was a full length ZoomX foam throughout the shoe from heel to toe. I actually think I like that better, if I'm being honest. I used to own the Vomero 17s, ran those out of course, and then once these came out, you know, I went ahead and purchased a couple pairs. Well, I bought this pair first, and I loved them so much that, you know, I went and bought a couple more. When I first ran in these shoes, you know, they were pretty good, you know what I'm saying? I didn't catch any real ailments like that. I ran in these shoes a few weeks ago. This was maybe like 4 weeks ago, about a month now, and I'm still kind of dealing with plantar, like a worsened plantar fasciitis in my right foot. So it could be that I haven't really worn these shoes, you know, out yet. I haven't really like broke them in, I guess you could say. These ones are very well broken in. I wore these a lot, but I haven't worn these that much. So I'm thinking that may just be the case. You know, if I can run in these and have no issues, that might just been the case, but it happens. So the stack height in these shoes, you're looking at 46 in the heel, 36 in the forefoot. So that leaves a good another 10 millimeter drop still. Now these shoes are a bit heavier, and it's because of the double foam that's in it, 11.5 ounces. So to be honest, I really shouldn't be running in these shoes anyway. At least not like, you know, it depends, I guess. I can wear them out, but like to run in them, I do have to be careful. You get heavier, you know, it kind of hurts when you do, you know, high impact cardio. What these shoes is good for is like your easy runs, right? Your recovery runs. You can even do long runs with these, right? So like your marathons, perhaps, maybe 5Ks, 10Ks. Not a speed shoe though. I would not recommend you do that. Wouldn't recommend you try to race in this shoe. The traction could have been a little better. I mean, it's not horrible, but as you can see, the traction, you know, is really set at the heel and then midfoot going towards the forefoot, you know what I'm saying? So like all this right here, not really sure why Nike decided to do that. I still, you know, haven't really figured out what the deal is with that right there, but there's nothing here. So, you know, it kind of, and it's not like you really notice it if you take these shoes out for a walk or even go for a run. You don't notice it too much, but it is something that I try to be cautious of when I do go out with these shoes because, you know, there's nothing there. You know, and I happen to be, I myself am a midfoot striker, right? I don't really strike heel toe like that unless I'm sprinting. So, you know, that's something I do got to be mindful of. But other than that, the traction is good. I mean, you know, it's not like you know, you'll slip or anything like that. And speaking of slip, there's no heel slip in this either. I believe from everything that I've seen, the Invincibles in general are a discontinued line. And so it's been said that the Vomeros are taking its place. Now the Invincibles, if you know anything about Nike Invincibles, those were, you know, the nice cushioned shoes, especially the 3s that came out, because I owned a pair of those. You know, they were great shoes, nice and cushiony, but the heel slippage sucked. So I guess this right here is the, you could consider this the replacement, or maybe the Vomero Plus might even be a better suited replacement for the Invincible 3. Either way, they fixed the heel slippage issue in this one. ZoomX on the top and the ReactX is on the bottom. So you're getting the best of both worlds. You get energy return and you get cushion, right? Like you get max cushion here. And it runs the whole length of the shoe too, so. These are my favorite shoes right here. These are like the best shoes to run in. These have served me so well since I started running in these shoes. These are the Adidas Ultraboost 5Xs. Now, these shoes, I think actually coming up here in the wintertime, Adidas, from what I've researched, looks like they're gonna release their Ultraboost 6X shoe. Can't wait to see what that looks like. You know, it's still in the works, I guess. But the bottom, you know, you have I'm gonna go over the traction first. I'm gonna kind of skip around a little bit. The traction is a Continental rubber. And I swear this thing lasts forever. It's like all over. All of this is traction. Maybe not the center, but that centerpiece actually, believe it or not, is a little torsion system. So, you know, it's got, when it comes to traction, you don't have to worry about anything when you take these shoes out for just a walk or run or what have you. The cushion in here, cushion is great. You know, the cushion is like, you notice it's there, you know what I'm saying? But it also accounts for everything else, such as like stability as well. You know, that's something else I forgot to mention in the Nikes, like, right? So like the Nike Vomero 18s, they're a lot more stable than the Invincible 3s were, right? Because there's some shoes that are meant for cushion, some that are meant for stability, and some that are meant for responsiveness, right? So those are the three that you want to look out for. Some shoes have all three, some shoes might only have one of three, and some shoes may have two of three. You know, that's something you do got to look out for. But the Ultraboost 5Xs has all three, right? It's got good energy return. It's got, you know, a good cushion system in here. You know, it uses the light boost, right? Light boost foam. It carries you on a run. Like when you hit the ground, the shoe like kind of forces you a little bit to pick up the pace. And believe it or not, the Vomero Pluses are the same way, you know, at least from my experience. I'm gonna go over that in a minute. But I myself am I believe it's called a overpronation. Because you have overpronation and underpronation, right? So underpronation is where when you take a step, your foot kind of goes inward. And underpronation is every time you take a step, your foot sort of goes outward just like this. So, you know, me, I tend to overpronate naturally just a little bit. I notice that my foot sort of goes in. So, but see, the thing with me though is, even though I overpronate a little bit, a stability shoe still wouldn't help me out that much. Like it'll keep my foot straight, but then I miss out on everything else. I still have ailments, you know what I'm saying, that I gotta worry about. So that's that. But I mean, these are some great shoes outside of, you know, just they're daily trainers. You know, they're good for recovery runs, easy runs. You can do marathons in them. You're not supposed to do speed in them, but you can. I mean, I've sprinted in these this past summer. When I go do my beach runs, I can sprint for what feels like forever before I have to stop. That's how good these shoes are for me. 38 millimeter in the rear, and then 28, I believe, in the forefoot. So again, it's a 10 millimeter drop. And these shoes, they're lighter, right? I guess they would be considered moderate, but they're definitely lighter, right? They're 9.7 ounces specifically. So it's not a heavy shoe at all to run in. And what I like about it is, you know, it's built kind of like a sock, right? It's designed like a sock. So the tongue is not really like one of your traditional tongues. It's not a typical one. It just, you know, you'll notice here, you can just fit your foot in the shoe. You know, the light boost all the way to the traction, the Continental rubber, which lasts forever. I love these shoes. There's an honorable mention I want to give out. I don't have this shoe anymore because, again, I ran that out too. And even still, you know, those shoes were getting old, and it was getting to the point where, like, you know, my big toe right here, it started to cave in. That part of the shoe started to cave in, so it was kind of uncomfortable to walk in, as it was always digging into my toe. So I had to get rid of them, but they were some great shoes. I'm gonna get into those shoes in a minute. They're called the Brooks Glycerin 22s. Just came out this year, so it's a nice honorable mention I'm gonna go into. But first, I want to give y'all these ones. These look like the Vomero 18s that I just showed you. It's because, well, they're not exactly the 18s. These are the Vomero Pluses. So these are the next step up. The Vomero Pluses, right? They have ZoomX foam in them, as you can see. I mean, you see the ZoomX label on here, but the good thing about these is it's a straight ZoomX foam, full length, right? Full layer of ZoomX. This is tuned for maximum cushioning. Okay, so it's not like the ZoomX that you find in the Pegasus Plus, for example. But these are tuned for maximum cushioning. These right here can easily be relatable to the Nike Invincible 3s. I love these shoes. First time I took these out on a run this past summer, oh my goodness, man. These shoes, like, it kind of forced me to pick up the pace, essentially. I was running at a moderate pace, and then it was like, I don't know, it just kind of forced me to keep going and to pick up a little bit. So these are good for tempo runs, I'll say. They're not supposed to be a speed shoe. These do weigh lighter than the Vomero 18s. So if you remember, the Vomero 18s was 11.5 ounces. These are 10.5. It's just 1 ounce, you know, lighter, but still, You know, and the reason for that, of course, is because, you know, the Vomero 18s had double foam, ReactX and ZoomX combined. This is just one. This is just the ZoomX. No ReactX in this one. Which is fine because in this one, you don't really need that shoe. You don't need that ReactX in this. Just the ZoomX, the maximum cushion tuning in here is all you really need. Trust me. I even went sprinting in these shoes. They did me pretty good. I ain't even gonna lie to you. Even though you're not supposed to, you know, speed in these shoes, they're not really designed for it. I just tested it out. I tried it when I was at the beach, you know, on the boardwalk, and yeah, these shoes, I felt like I could sprint forever in these as well. You know, I had all the cushioning in the world. I didn't feel really much of anything underneath my feet. Felt like walking and running on clouds. That's how stacked these are. 46 in the heel and 36 in the forefoot. So again, it's another 10mm drop. Traction, much better than the Vomero 18s. So if you remember, the Vomero 18s had that little middle piece that was just like blank, I guess you could say. It was nothing really there. Just traction everywhere. And even outsides, the center. I believe the Vomeros is taking over the Invincible line. Just like Nike has a structure line, which is their stability shoe. Their structure line, I believe, is going to take over or has taken over the Infinity line. The only line that's still going on is the Pegasus. I mean, hell, they're on their 41st iteration. So that tells you how long Pegasus has been, you know, making shoes for. Or Nike's been making their Pegasus anyway. They're not really a dedicated speed shoe, but you can do easy runs. You can do marathons, half marathons, right? You can do 5Ks, 10Ks, because the cushion is what's going to carry you, right? As you're doing these long runs, the cushion is what's going to make it feel as though, you know, like it's going to just feel like, you know, like I said, you're running on clouds. So you're not going to feel any kind of pain or discomfort because of that stacked cushion, that high, you know, stacked cushion in the shoe. That's about it for my collection, but I do want to go over that honorable mention, and that's going to be the Brooks Glycerin 22s. So when I had those shoes, you know, they were pretty good, a little on the heavy side. If I had a choice, I'd probably go with the Glycerin 21s, the model before, because they were a little lighter, okay? You know, they had, the cushioning they use is called DNA Loft, and they use version 3 in the Glycerin 21s. They also use DNA Loft, I believe, in Brooks's Go shoes, as well as Brooks's Adrenaline shoes. Now, in the Glycerin 22s, they used what's called DNA Tuned. Basically, the difference between the two, between DNA Loft V3 and the DNA Tuned shoes, is you get a little bit more cushion in the Glycerin 22s than you got in the 21s. But don't get it twisted, the 21s is absolutely cushioned. Like, you can run in those shoes all day long too. Marathons, half marathons, and all of that. Not really a dedicated speed shoe though, you know, but you can pick up the pace a little bit. You can do up-tempo runs in the 21s because, you know, they're a little lighter. 38mm heel, 28mm forefoot stack height, so that leaves a 10mm drop, of course. Now the shoe weighs about 10.2 ounces. All right, so 10.2 is, again, not the heaviest, but it does err a little bit on the heavy side. Like, if you're gonna be, that's why it's not really a dedicated shoe for sprints and speeds and racing and things like that. I believe for Brooks specifically, because I love Brooks too. I've owned Brooks ever since I was in the Army. All the running that I used to do in the Army, you know, I was put on the Brooks during my time in service. Their dedicated speed shoe is the Hyperions. Okay, so for racing, speeding, you know, and speed training and stuff like that, their Brooks Hyperions, that's gonna be the model for that. But for everything else though, the Brooks Glycerin 22s, you know, it's for easy runs, long runs, marathons and such. And of course recovery runs. Now, as I mentioned, because of its weight, it's not really meant for speed. Maybe do up tempo. You know, I tried picking up the pace in the Glycerin 22s and I started hurting a little bit. That did not work for me. Like my joints was screaming. There's two different Glycerin 22 models. Usually, I mean, just Glycerins in general, there's the GTS and then there's the regular version. So with Brooks Glycerin 22s, that's just the regular 22s, right? So, you know, you're gonna be dealing with the cushion, right? The Glycerins is Brooks's max cushioning shoe. You know, the Adrenalines is more so for picking up the pace a little bit, responsive. I guess I could say energy return is the Adrenalines. And the Ghost, I think, is just like just a regular daily trainer. It's like for neutral support, things like that, right? But the Glycerin 22s, you also have what's called the Glycerin 22 GTS. The GTS in Brooks stands for Go-To Stability. So it's a stability shoe essentially. You're still gonna get cushion. Unfortunately, they remove a portion of the cushioning so that they can make room for what's called guide rails inside the shoe. GTS Brooks shoes have what's called guide rails installed in them to help keep your feet straight, right? So if you over or under pronate, they help keep your feet straight. You know, in order to set the guide rails inside the shoe, they have to remove a little bit of the cushioning. So you do sacrifice a little bit of cushioning if that's what you're looking for. If you want cushioning, you gotta stick with the Glycerin 22. Anyway, so these are designed for nice, smooth, and stable transitions, right? And they're good for, like, the traction is pretty good on different types of surfaces, right? So that's wet, that's dry, road, grass, gravel, etc. It's nitrogen infused, right? It's got nitrogen infused dual cells, right? For even more plush landings and responsive, you know, toe offs. Now the Loft V3, as I mentioned, is, you know, it's still a comfort and soft ride, but you just don't get the responsiveness and the energy return that you would get from the NA Tuned. And they also improved the upper, right? And made the fit a little bit more flexible. So basically, you know, depending on what it is that you're looking for, there's a dedicated shoe for everything, all different types of activity, whether you're running, whether, you know, you're doing fast walking, or maybe you're doing the Stairmaster, you know, stuff like that, or you're doing plyometrics, jumping, box jumps, stuff like that. I mean, there's different types of shoes that are best for all of those type of activities. And your best bet will be to go to if you have one near you, you know, go to a store where they help fit you for shoes. So that way you know what type of shoes you should be getting. I was doing beach runs, and as long as I was doing them in the right type of shoe, you know, I was good. One of the shoes that I bought and had to actually return was it was an Asics shoe. I believe it was the Asics Gel Nimbus 27s that came out this year. Oh my God, those shoes. The cushioning was great. Like, it really felt like you were walking on clouds, right? The blisters and the foot pain and stuff that came with it was just, it sucked. It didn't make it worth it. It's a heavy shoe on top of that. So I had to take those shoes back. You know, I used to wear Asics actually when I was in the Army, but I know when I joined, when you went through boot camp, they issued you Asics shoes for running, right? So like you wore Asics. I remember I had the GT 1002s. Or maybe it was just the GT 1000s, I can't remember. I might have upgraded to the 2s once I got to AIT, you know, where I went to go learn my job. That's what I ran in, so. And I ran in the Asics for a while before, you know, exploring with Nike and then Brooks and so on. You know, Asics, they're not bad shoes. You do want to be careful with the type of shoe you get. I'm a heavy person in general, so for me to run in a heavy shoe, it's only gonna make it that much worse. So those are all things you want to be mindful of, right? You want to, you know, try to make sure that you know, are aware of certain things. Like you make sure you're aware of your pronation. So every time you take a step, if you over pronate or you under pronate, then, you know, a stability shoe generally is what's going to work for you, but maybe not, right? Maybe you also need, like, because if you get a stability shoe, stability shoes typically don't have, you know, the cushioning that you may need. Cushioning is like the top priority for me. Impact makes those ailments worse. Stability alone is not going to do anything for me. If I have a shoe that has the best of all worlds, like the Adidas Ultraboost 5Xs, then that's all the better. You know what I'm saying? But you know, just a little something to think about, right? You want to look at the traction too, okay? You know what I'm saying? Because if you're one to, like, you know, slip, if you're very clumsy or what have you, you definitely want to make sure you get some traction that, you know, works on different types of surfaces. Vomero Pluses is great, right? It has great traction. Unfortunately though, because of the high stack height, something else you do want to be mindful of, this is a disadvantage to this shoe, is if you're running and you go to turn a corner. Because the shoe is highly stacked, you don't really have that ground feel. So when you go to turn a corner, it can be easy to break your ankle if you turn a corner really fast. You kind of want to make sure you slow down when you're running in these shoes before you turn that corner. It's one disadvantage to high stack shoes. Look out for all of those things. Traction, weight is important. So if you're a heavy person, you don't really want a heavy shoe. You want something that's lighter, okay? You could probably run in a heavier shoe if you're a lighter person. It's a good challenge, you know, it's a good way to push yourself. But, you know, you definitely want to make sure you get, depending on what you're trying to do, get yourself a dedicated shoe for that specific activity. That's it, y'all. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and thank y'all for, you know, taking a look at my shoe collection. You know what I'm saying? These are my sneakers, you know. I can't do the Jordans and none of that anymore, as great as that be, you know. Can't really do the Air Force Ones and all that like I used to. Gotta be a little bit more strategic in the shoes I wear when I go out. Ailments will do that to you, you know. Guess I got Army service to thank for that. But hey, you know, I wouldn't have it any other way. So I hope y'all have a great rest of y'all day or night, whatever time it is for you when you're watching this. And I will see y'all on the next one. Catch y'all later.